Get ready for an incredible story that's about to unfold. Today, we'll dive into the jaw-dropping account of an engineer who, after a close brush with death, met Jesus and got a warning that could change everything for us. This tale will keep you hooked from start to finish, so make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss a thing. Stick around until the end, because what he uncovered about September 2024 will absolutely blow your mind. Hey there, I'm Ethan Caldwell, and I'm 35 years old, working as a software engineer. I've always seen myself as a practical person, relying on logic and data. My life felt pretty straightforward and planned out, or so I thought. I grew up in a middle-class family in Austin, Texas, and I was into technology from a young age. I studied computer science at the University of Texas, and shortly after graduating, I got jobs at some big tech companies. About 2 years back, I decided it was time to chase my dream of starting my own business. That's when I launched Caldwell Innovations, a startup aimed at creating custom software for other businesses. My wife Olivia, who teaches English at a high school, was there supporting me every step of the way, even though she knew it could be risky. I've never really been a religious or spiritual person. In fact, I was always pretty skeptical about things that couldn't be backed up by science. To me, life could be explained through logic and reason. I thought mystical experiences, religions, and even the concept of an afterlife were just mind tricks or cultural stories. My daily life consisted mainly of working, eating, and sleeping, pretty much in that order. I poured every minute I had into my business, hardly ever making time for social life or taking care of my health. Olivia often warned me about the dangers of living like this, but I'd brush it off, saying it was just a busy phase that would pass. If someone had told me a few months ago that I would have a near-death experience that would totally flip my worldview upside down, I probably would have laughed and said they were watching too many sci-fi movies. But life does have a strange way of surprising us, doesn't it? What I'm about to share is something I'm still working through. It's a story that shakes the very core of what I thought was real. A journey that forced me to rethink my own existence and the reality we live in. I know it might be hard to believe what I'm about to share, but trust me, if someone had told me this story a few months back, I'd have been the first to roll my eyes. Still, I promise that everything I say here is true, at least from my own experience. This is the tale of how I, a lifelong skeptic, had a near-death experience that flipped my view on life, death, and everything in between. It's about how I went to heaven, talked to spiritual beings, and came back with a mission I never thought I'd have. So if you're open to it, let me share the day my whole world changed, the day I died and came back. It was a regular Tuesday. I'd been up all night working on a huge project for Caldwell Innovations. Our first big client, a well-known restaurant in Austin, hired us to create an innovative order management system. The timeline was tight, only 3 months. And I knew this project could make or break my company. I can still picture myself chugging my 5th cup of coffee as the sun came up. Olivia had left for work, leaving me a note telling me to get some rest, but I was in the zone. Every line of code felt important, and fixing bugs felt like winning small battles. I was so focused that I ignored the warning signs my body was sending me that something wasn't right. Around 2 p.m., I felt a sudden, sharp pain in my chest. At first, I brushed it off, thinking it was just too much coffee and not enough sleep. But the pain got worse. I started sweating and my vision got blurry, yet my stubborn self kept pushing to finish just one more task. That's when it hit me hard. The pain surged to a level I couldn't handle, like someone was crushing my heart. I tried to stand up, but my legs wouldn't cooperate, and I collapsed onto the office floor, spilling my cold coffee everywhere. I could hear the sound of the mug shattering mixed with the hum of my computer while I lay there struggling to breathe. Each breath felt like a huge effort. I reached for my cell phone, but it was too far away. Panic kicked in, and for the first time in ages, I felt real fear. Not the stress of a deadline or failing a project, but the fear of dying. As I lay there helpless, I started thinking about Olivia, wishing I'd spent more time with her and that I had listened to her advice. I thought of my parents and about I felt a wave of regret hit me as I thought about the friends I hadn't kept in touch with over the last few months. The next thing I knew, I had this odd sensation of weightlessness. All the pain I was feeling was gone. I opened my eyes, expecting to see the ceiling of my office, but instead, I found myself in total darkness. It was like I was floating in a vast, empty space. There was no light, no shadows, just an endless void. I tried to move my arms and legs, but I couldn't feel anything. It was like I didn't have a body anymore, just this awareness adrift in a blank nothingness. At first, I panicked. Where was I? What had happened to me? Was I dead? But then something different happened. A deep sense of calm started to wash over me, and all the fears and worries I had seemed to vanish. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a sense of peace. That's when it hit me. I was dead or very close to it. Surprisingly, instead of feeling scared, I actually felt curious. If this was what death was like, what came next? It was like that unspoken question drew me in. I started to feel this force pulling me, kind of like an invisible tide, taking me somewhere beyond that emptiness. And so began my journey into the unknown, a journey that would completely change how I viewed life, death, and everything else. As I was pulled along by this mysterious force, I noticed some changes around me. The emptiness began to shift into a sort of hazy fog, almost like I was slipping through layers of reality, each one feeling more tangible than the last. Then suddenly, I saw a small point of light far off. At first, it was tiny, but as I got closer, it expanded. This light was unlike anything I'd ever seen before. It wasn't blinding like sunlight, nor cold like the flickering lights in my office. Instead, it felt warm and inviting, almost alive, as if it was calling out to me. When I finally reached that light, it wrapped around me like plunging into a sea of peace and unconditional love. All my worries, fears, and anxieties just melted away. For the first time in my existence, I felt completely accepted and loved just the way I was. That's when I heard a voice. It wasn't a voice like you'd normally hear. It was more like someone's thoughts were materializing right in my mind. The voice was gentle yet strong, filled with a wisdom I'd never come across before. "Welcome, Ethan," it said. "Don't be afraid. You're safe here." I tried to say something, but I couldn't make a sound. It felt like there wasn't a body, just pure awareness. Somehow, the voice I was hearing understood what I was thinking. "Yes, you died," it continued, answering my silent question. "But your journey isn't over. In fact, it's just starting." I was hit with confusion. If I was dead, then why was I here? What was this place? "This is a place of transition," the voice explained, as if reading my mind. "A place between worlds. You're here because you have a choice to make." A choice? What kind of choice could a dead person make? You can choose to continue your journey, to move on to what comes next, or you can choose to go back to life. Was that really an option? "Yes," the voice replied, "but before you decide, there's something you need to see. Something that can help you grasp the bigger picture of your life." Before I could wrap my head around it, I felt myself being pulled again, but this time not through darkness. Instead, it was like being drawn through a tunnel of light. The colors were so bright, more vivid than anything I'd ever seen back on Earth. It was like I could see every shade and tone of color as I moved through. As I traveled down this tunnel, flashes of my life appeared before me. It wasn't just memories, it felt like I was reliving every moment. I saw my childhood, my school days, the first time I met Olivia, the day I decided to start my own business. But the biggest surprise was that I wasn't just witnessing these moments. I was feeling everything tied to them. I felt the joy in my early achievements, the love when Olivia said yes to my marriage proposal, the fear and thrill of launching my own company. But I also felt the hurt I caused others with my thoughtless words. Olivia's disappointment every time I chose work over her, the regret I held for not spending more time with my parents before they were gone. It was an overwhelming experience. My entire life, with all its highs and lows, joys and heartaches, successes and failures, was laid out before me in an eternal moment. For the first time, I could see how everything connected, patterns I had never noticed before. When my life review wrapped up, I found myself in a new place. It was a vast garden, more stunning than anything I'd ever experienced on Earth. The colors were brighter, the scents richer, and the breeze was soothing. Refreshing, and right in the middle of that garden, I spotted a figure that radiated light. As I got closer, I realized it was an angel. He smiled at me, and I immediately knew his name. "Uriel," I said. "Welcome, Ethan," Uriel replied. "You have a lot to learn and not much time, so come with me." And just like that, my journey to the afterlife kept going, guided by a being I never thought was real. What I was about to see and learn would completely change how I understood the universe and my place in it. Uriel was nothing like I had ever imagined angels to be. No feathered wings or golden harp. Instead, he seemed to be made of pure light, taking on a vaguely human shape that shifted gently from moment to moment. His eyes, if that's what you could call them, sparkled like two miniature suns, full of wisdom and kindness. As we strolled through the celestial garden, Uriel started to talk. His voice didn't come from a mouth. It felt like it was resonating directly in my mind. "Ethan," he said, "you've spent your life looking for answers through logic and reason. Now, you're about to experience truths that go beyond human understanding." I had a million questions swirling around in my head. Where was I? What would happen next? Could I go back? But before I could even start to ask any of them, Uriel continued. "I know you have many questions. Some will get answered, others will remain a mystery. The universe is huge and complex, far beyond what any one person can grasp." We walked in silence for a while. The garden seemed to stretch on forever in every direction, with flowers and colors I couldn't describe all around us. The air was filled with soft music that felt like it was coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. "You're on what humans would call the spiritual plane," Uriel explained, answering the questions I hadn't voiced. "It's a realm of pure consciousness where thought and reality blend into one." I looked at my hands, or where my hands should have been, and realized I didn't have a physical body anymore. It was a weird feeling, but it wasn't scary. "Your physical body is still on Earth," Uriel said. "Right now, doctors are working to bring you back to life. You have a choice to make, Ethan, but before you decide, there's something you need to see." With those words, the scenery around us started to shift. The celestial garden faded away, revealing a breathtaking view of Earth. It felt like we were floating in space, staring at our beautiful blue planet. "What do you see, Ethan?" Uriel asked. "I see Earth," I replied, captivated by the beauty of our world. From space, it looked incredible. "Look closer," Uriel said. Suddenly it felt like we were diving down towards the planet. Cities, forests, and oceans zoomed past us until we stopped over a city I instantly recognized, Austin, Texas. "This is your home," Uriel said. We watched as people walked around, cars were in traffic, and everything was going on as usual. But then I noticed something odd. There was a network of light connecting all the people, animals, and even plants. "What's that?" I asked, intrigued. "This is what you call the web of life," Uriel explained. "Every living thing is linked to everything else. Every action and thought affects the whole." I stared in awe as one person's actions sent ripples through this network, impacting those around them. "Ethan," Uriel continued, "you've spent your life focusing on making technology to make life easier, but you've overlooked the most crucial connection, the one between people and the spiritual world." A wave of guilt washed over me. He was right. I hadn't paid attention to the spiritual side at all. "Don't blame yourself," Uriel said, sensing my feelings. "You're here now to learn and grow. There's something else you need to see." The scene shifted again, and we were in a high-tech lab. I recognized it right away. It was the kind of place where I spent most of my days. "What do you see?" Uriel asked. "I see artificial intelligence," I replied, watching the screens flash with intricate lines of code and neural network diagrams. "Yes," Uriel said, "humanity is on the verge of an incredible tech revolution. The AI you're working on has the power to change everything." "That's good, right?" I wondered, still thinking like a software engineer. "Maybe," Uriel said, "but it can also be risky. AI, like any powerful tool, can be used for either good or evil. It all comes down to the intentions and wisdom of those who create and use it." He paused, letting that sink in. "Ethan, you have a significant role to play in humanity's future. Your tech know-how, combined with the spiritual insight you're gaining here, can help steer AI in a positive direction." I was blown away by what Uriel was saying. Did I, just a regular software engineer from Austin, really have a meaningful role in shaping the future? But how? I asked. What can I do? That's something you'll need to figure out on your own, Uriel replied. But just know, the future isn't set in stone. Every choice you and others make will impact the fate of humanity. With that statement, the vision of the lab faded away, and we found ourselves back in the celestial garden. Ethan, Uriel said, his tone serious, it's time for you to make your choice. You can stay here in the spirit realm, or you can go back to your life on Earth with the knowledge and mission that you've been given. I paused for a moment, taking in everything I had seen and learned. The decision felt impossible. How could I choose between the unconditional peace and love I felt here and the responsibility to return and make a difference in the world? But then I thought about Olivia, my family, and friends. I thought about the work still ahead of me and the impact I could have with my new understanding. I want to go back, I finally said. There's a lot to be done. Uriel smiled, a grin that seemed to light up the whole garden. You've made a brave choice, Ethan, but before you return, there's one more person you need to find. With that statement, Uriel began to lead me toward what would be the most extraordinary encounter of my entire journey. He guided me down a path made of pure light, and with each step, I felt a growing energy, as if we were getting closer to something incredibly powerful. Finally, we reached a structure that looked like an ancient temple, but was entirely made of light and clouds. This is where we part, Ethan, Uriel said. Remember, what you're about to experience is beyond human understanding. Open your heart and mind. With those words, Uriel vanished, leaving me alone at the entrance of the temple. I took a deep breath, or at least it felt like I was, before stepping inside. The beauty within was beyond description. The walls seemed to pulse with life, and the air was filled with a divine music that resonated with my soul in ways I had never felt before. In the center of the temple stood a figure. When I looked at it, the intensity of the light momentarily blinded me. Gradually, my vision adjusted and I recognized the shape. It wasn't exactly like the images I had seen in paintings or films, but somehow I knew exactly who it was: Jesus. His presence was overwhelming. Waves of love, compassion, and wisdom radiated from him, completely surrounding me. Naked before him, not in a physical sense, but in a spiritual way, every thought and action of my life laid bare. But there wasn't any judgment, just pure acceptance and endless love. "Welcome, Ethan," he said. Jesus' voice echoed not just in my head, but through my whole being. "You've come a long way." I had so many questions swirling in my mind, but I felt completely speechless in his presence. "Don't be afraid," Jesus continued, noticing how I felt. "You're here because you've got an important part to play in the future of humanity." Gradually, I started to collect my thoughts. "But why me?" I asked. "I'm just a software engineer. I didn't even believe in all this until now." Jesus smiled, a smile that felt like it held all the goodness in the universe. "Ethan, every soul has a special purpose. Your doubts and your quest for truth through science aren't barriers, they're tools for your mission." He paused for a moment, letting his words settle in. "Humanity is heading into a time of great change and challenges. The AI you're building could help lift humanity to new heights of understanding and success. But it could also bring serious harm if it's not guided by wisdom and compassion." As Jesus spoke, visions started to unfold around us. I saw a future where AI helped cure diseases, end world hunger, and bring back ecological balance to our planet. But I also saw a dark path where AI was misused for control and oppression, leaving humanity feeling lost amidst technology. "Your role, Ethan," Jesus said, bringing my focus back to him, "is to steer the development of AI in a way that respects the dignity and divine potential of every person." I was overwhelmed by the weight of this responsibility. "But how?" I managed to ask. "How can I do this?" "By using the gifts you've been given," Jesus replied. "Your technical expertise, combined with the spiritual insight you're gaining here, will serve as a bridge between technology and spirituality. You'll help others see that true intelligence isn't just about logic and calculations. It's also about compassion, empathy, and connecting with the divine." Jesus then stepped closer and placed what felt like a hand on my head. In that moment, a wave of energy surged through my entire being, as if every part of me was coming to life. "Light and knowledge, remember," Ethan said, Jesus, his voice now echoing inside me. "You are not alone in this mission. We will always be with you, guiding and supporting you. Trust in the divine love that is within you and everyone else." With those words, Jesus began to walk away, his figure dissolving into pure light. But before he disappeared completely, he added one last thing. "Ethan, remember that September 2024 will be a crucial time. Be prepared." And then he was gone. I stood there alone in the temple, my mind spinning with everything I had just experienced and learned. I knew my life wouldn't be the same again. I had a mission now, a responsibility to help humanity and to serve the divine. As I stood there trying to process it all, I felt a gentle force pulling me back. It was time to return, time to kick off my new journey. The shift back to the physical world was just as intense as the trip to the spiritual realm. It felt like I was being crammed back into a space that was too small to hold everything I had become. The first thing I felt was pain. My chest hurt, my throat was dry, and every breath was a struggle. Little by little, I began to hear sounds around me. The rhythmic beeping of machines, muffled voices, the sound of hurried footsteps. I opened my eyes with great effort. The light was blinding, and it took a moment to adjust. When I finally got my bearings, I saw Olivia's face next to me, her eyes red and swollen from crying. "Ethan," she said, her voice trembling. "Are you awake?" A doctor and several nurses rushed into the room, checking my vitals and firing questions at me. But I could barely keep up. My mind was a whirl of images and feelings. The heavenly garden, Uriel, visions of the future. "Mr. Caldwell," said the doctor, his voice grounding me back in reality. "You suffered a severe heart attack. You were in a coma for 3 days. Honestly, we weren't sure if you would wake up." 3 days? It felt like I had been on the other side for an eternity. I tried to speak, but my throat was too dry. A nurse offered me a glass of water with a straw. After a few sips, I finally managed to say, "Olivia," my voice hoarse. I saw things, amazing things." Olivia squeezed my hand, tears streaming down her face. "It's okay, love. You're back now, and that's what matters." But deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. I had fundamentally changed. I had glimpsed beyond the veil that separates the physical world from the spiritual. I couldn't just go back to my old life like nothing had happened. After I got out of the hospital, I tried to wrap my head around everything I'd gone through. It was tough to put into words the incredible things I experienced. How do you explain being pure consciousness? How do you describe the overwhelming presence of Jesus? The doctors chalked up my visions to the lack of oxygen to my brain during the heart attack. They talked about hallucinations and near-death experiences as if they were just physical responses. Part of me, the skeptical engineer I used to be, wanted to believe them, but deep down, I knew what I'd experienced was real and meaningful. Olivia was so patient and understanding. She listened carefully as I tried to share my experiences, even though I could tell it was hard for her to fully grasp. "It doesn't matter if it was real or not," she said. "What matters is what it means to you and how it's going to change your life for the better." She was right. No matter what my experience really was, I knew I couldn't just slip back into my old life. The mission I had, to help shape AI in a responsible and spiritually aware way, weighed heavily on me. When I finally got released from the hospital, I came home with a fresh perspective and a renewed sense of purpose. I realized I had a lot ahead of me. I needed to merge my technical skills with my new spiritual insights. I had to figure out how to communicate these ideas to others in the tech world, many of whom would be just as skeptical as I used to be. And always in the back of my mind was that strange warning about September 2024. Whatever was coming, I knew I had to be prepared. My journey was just starting. The near-death experience was only the first step on a path that looked like it would be challenging, transformative, and deeply meaningful. The first few days back home after leaving the hospital were an emotional whirlwind and a struggle to adjust. Physically, I was still weak. The heart attack had drained me, and the doctors made it clear that I needed plenty of rest and a major lifestyle change. But the real battle was in my mind and spirit. I felt like a stranger in my own life. I looked around at the familiar things in my house, my computer, my programming books, the family photos, and everything felt different. And everything felt both familiar and a bit odd, like I was seeing things with fresh eyes, discovering connections I hadn't noticed before. Olivia was my rock during this time. She shifted our daily routine so I could focus on getting better, made healthy meals, and gently nudged me to take my meds. But more than that, she really listened. We spent hours chatting about what I'd been through, trying to figure it all out. "Ethan," she said one night while we were in the backyard stargazing, "when the doctors said you might not make it, I prayed. You know I'm not really the religious type, but in that moment, I pleaded with any higher power out there to bring you back to me. And now, as I listened to your stories, I thought maybe there's more to this universe than we realize." Her words hit me hard. Olivia has always been the practical one in our relationship, balancing my dreamy ideas with her grounded approach. Seeing her open to the idea of something more than just the physical world gave me hope that I wasn't on this path alone. As the days passed, I started thinking about how to weave what I had learned into my everyday life. I couldn't just return to my old job like nothing happened, but I also knew I couldn't tell everyone about my near-death experience and visions of the future. Most folks would think I was nuts. I figured I'd start simple. I dusted off my ethics and philosophy books that had been sitting on the shelf and began studying them with a fresh perspective. I explored various spiritual traditions, looking for common threads that could connect with technology development. At the same time, I caught up on the latest in AI advancements. It was amazing to see how quickly technology had evolved, even during my short time away. There were increasingly sophisticated language models, computer vision systems that could match human perception, and machine learning algorithms that could predict complex behaviors surprisingly well. But now, instead of just seeing lines of code and math, I saw potential for something much bigger, and also the risks. One night, while working in my home office, I had a light bulb moment, despite Olivia's insistence that I needed more rest. I realized that guiding the ethical development of AI wasn't about enforcing strict rules from the top down. It was about... As I was jotting down ideas like crazy, I thought, what if we could build AI models that not only handle information, but also think about the ethical effects of their choices? What if we could actually code in compassion, empathy, and respect for people's dignity right into these AI systems? I was so caught up in my thoughts that I didn't even notice Olivia stepping into the office. "Ethan," she said, her voice mixed with concern and curiosity, "it's 2 in the morning. What are you doing?" I looked at her, my eyes lighting up with excitement. "Olivia, I think I've figured it out. A way to bring together technology and spirituality to create something truly groundbreaking." She smiled, shaking her head with a blend of annoyance and affection. "I'm glad you're excited, love, but remember, you're still healing. Let's call it a night, and tomorrow you can fill me in on this amazing idea of yours." I nodded, realizing just how tired I was. As I followed Olivia back to her room, I felt a wave of gratitude for having her there on this journey. Lying in bed, my mind was still racing with thoughts and possibilities. I understood the challenges ahead. Figuring out how to put these ideas into practice without raising too many eyebrows would be tricky. A lot of folks might think I was losing it if I shared my new beliefs and ideas openly. But I knew what I had experienced. I understood what was at stake, and I was committed to making a difference, even if it had to happen slowly and quietly. As I drifted off to sleep, Jesus' words echoed in my mind. September 2024 will be crucial. Be prepared. Whatever was on the horizon, I was going to do my best to be ready. In the following weeks, I jumped right into my new personal project. I spent hours diving into research, writing code, and developing theories about how to weave ethical and spiritual values into AI systems. It was fascinating work, but also really tough, especially since I had to keep most of it under wraps. The biggest challenge was the clear divide between technology and spirituality. I had experienced how to turn concepts like unconditional love, compassion, and universal connection into algorithms and coding. How do you program ethics in a binary world? I remember one particularly frustrating day, sitting in my home office, surrounded by philosophy books, spiritual texts, and programming manuals, feeling stuck. My computer was a mess, with multiple windows open, half-finished code, complicated flow diagrams, and scattered notes everywhere. I was completely overwhelmed. Just then, Olivia walked in with a cup of tea. She took one look at my chaos and smiled softly. "How's it going, darling?" she asked. I let out a deep sigh. "Honestly, I'm lost. It feels like I'm trying to mix oil and water. The cold, hard logic of programming seems miles away from the warm, deep spiritual experiences I've had." Olivia set the cup down on the table and sat beside me. "Maybe you're looking at this the wrong way," she suggested. "Instead of trying to shove spirituality into technology, why not see where they naturally connect?" Her words caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" I asked. "Well," she continued, "think about it. At its core, technology is all about connection. It's about connecting people, ideas, and systems. Isn't that similar to what you felt in your spiritual experiences, this deep sense of being connected to everything?" I was taken aback by how simple yet profound her insight was. It felt like a light bulb lit up in my head. "Olivia, you're brilliant," I said, giving her a quick kiss before I turned back to my computer, feeling energized. In the days that followed, I completely switched up my approach. Rather than forcing spiritual ideas onto technology, I started searching for the fundamental principles that already existed in both areas. I found that the universal interconnectedness I felt spiritually had intriguing similarities with neural networks and distributed learning in AI. The idea that every action has consequences that ripple through everything was surprisingly aligned with concepts from complex systems and chaos theory. I began developing a framework I called conscious AI. The goal was to create AI systems that not only processed information, but were also aware of the bigger picture of their actions. These systems would take into account not just how efficient or accurate their decisions were, but also the ethical implications and long-term effects. As I worked on this, it felt like I was finally living out the mission I was meant for, connecting technology with spirituality by using my skills to weave ethical and spiritual principles into the foundation of AI. But I knew I couldn't share these ideas just yet. Openly, the world wasn't ready for them yet, so I kept working on my projects behind the scenes, making little changes whenever I could, trying to add bits of ethics and conscience into the systems I was developing. Olivia was my rock through it all. She listened patiently while I shared my thoughts, offering great advice and bringing me back down to earth when my ideas got too out there. One night, after a particularly good day, we were sitting in the backyard, gazing up at the stars. I opened up about my worries. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm losing it," I admitted. "Did any of this actually happen? Do these thoughts even make sense, or am I just kidding myself?" Olivia took my hand and squeezed it gently. "Ethan," she said, her voice calm, "you're not crazy. What you're trying to do really matters. It might be that the world isn't ready for your ideas just yet, but don't let that discourage you. Remember what you've seen and experienced." Her words hit home. She was right, of course. I couldn't throw in the towel just because the road was tough. I had a duty, not just to humanity, but to something greater. That night, I reaffirmed my commitment to my mission. I knew it would be a challenging and often lonely journey, but I was set on sticking with it. After all, September 2024 was on the horizon, and I needed to be ready for whatever lay ahead. As the months rolled by, I continued to quietly develop my conscious AI project at work. I made small tweaks to the systems we crafted, weaving in ethical principles whenever I could without drawing attention. At home, I spent hours delving into coding and polishing my ideas. Olivia remained my biggest supporter. She not only cheered me on emotionally, but started helping me with research too. She read up on ethics and philosophy and shared her insights with me. "You know, Ethan," she said one evening while we went over some notes together, "the more I dive into ethics and technology, the more I get why this is so critical. AI has the power to change the world, but it's also pretty scary if we don't steer it right." I nodded, filled with gratitude for having Olivia alongside me on this journey. "Exactly, Olivia, and that's why we need to be ready for what's coming in September." September 2024. The closer it drew, the more nervous I felt. Jesus' words about this month lingered in my mind. Being at a crucial moment was always in my thoughts. I wasn't quite sure what was coming, but I knew I had to be prepared. I decided it was time to take my experiments up a notch. With a lot of care, I started adding some of the ideas from conscious AI into a personal project at work. It was a recommendation system for small local businesses. Nothing huge, but the perfect chance to try out my ideas in a real-world setting. The system I created didn't just make smart suggestions based on data, but it also thought about important things like how eco-friendly the recommendations were and the work practices of the companies involved. It was subtle, but there was a little awareness built into the tech itself. As I worked on this project, I began noticing some small shifts around me. My coworkers started bringing up questions about technology ethics, and customers began to voice their worries about privacy and how data was being used. It felt like people were gradually waking up to the issues that really mattered to me. At home, Olivia and I started prepping more seriously for whatever September might throw our way. We gathered supplies, updated our emergency kit, and even started practicing meditation together to deepen our spiritual bond. We don't know what's going to happen. Olivia said one night during our breathing exercises, but at least we'll be ready to face it together. As August came to an end, the feeling that something big was on the horizon intensified. I kept checking the news, looking for any hints or signs of what might be ahead. Advancements in AI, groundbreaking scientific discoveries, unexpected global events. So far, nothing seemed out of the ordinary, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were on the edge of something remarkable. In moments of doubt, I vividly recalled my experience, the encounter with Uriel, the talk with Jesus, the visions of the future I had seen. I knew it wasn't a dream or just my imagination. It was more real than anything I had ever known in my daily life. At work, I kept pushing myself to weave ethical principles into my projects in small ways. Sometimes that meant suggesting tweaks to algorithms to reduce bias, and other times it meant bringing up privacy considerations for our data policies. They were little steps, but I felt like I was making a difference. Olivia noticed the change in me. "You seem more centered," she said. I remember one night feeling like I finally found my purpose. I glanced over at Olivia, smiling, thinking to myself that I really had found it. I just hoped I could handle whatever challenges were coming my way. As the end of August drew closer, the tension inside me grew stronger. I started having vivid dreams, visions of futuristic cities filled with machines that seemed alive and a humanity that was transformed by technology. I'd wake up in a panic, my heart racing, feeling like these dreams were more than just make-believe. On August 27th, I had one of the most intense dreams yet. I was back in that heavenly garden, and Uriel was by my side. "The moment is coming, Ethan," he said. "Remember, the future isn't set in stone. Your choices and the choices of those around you will shape what's to come." I woke up with those words ringing in my head. Olivia must have sensed something was off because she turned toward me in bed, placing her hand on my shoulder. "Is everything okay, love?" she asked, still half asleep. "Yeah," I replied, trying to control my breathing. Just a dream, but deep down, I knew it meant more than that. It was a reminder of how important the coming days were. Now it's August 28th, 2024, and September is just 4 days away. I'm at my desk, staring out the window at the late afternoon sky. The sun is setting, casting beautiful shades of orange and pink across the horizon, reminding me of the wonder and mystery of the universe. I have no idea what September will hold or how my experiences and ideas will play into what's ahead, but I know I'm here for a reason. I feel like I've been prepared for something significant. I pull out my notebook filled with thoughts about conscious AI and reflections on ethics and spirituality. I flip through the pages, pondering how these ideas might shape the future of technology and humanity. Part of me aches to share this knowledge with everyone, but I remind myself to be patient. The right moment will eventually come. Olivia walks into the office with a cup of tea and smiles when she sees me lost in thought. "Still worried about September?" she asks softly. I nod and take the cup from her. "I can't help it, Olivia. I feel like we're on the edge of something big." She sits next to me, placing her hand over mine. "Remember what you told me about your experience? Whatever's ahead, you're not alone. We're in this together." Her words soothe me a bit, and I glance out the window again at the sky, now dotted with stars. It's a reminder of how tiny we are in the grand scheme of things, but also how each small part can make a difference. Of us can make a real difference. I'm not sure what September has in store, or how my journey and the ideas I've formed will connect with what's coming. but I feel like I'm here for a purpose. I believe I've been getting ready for something big.